You blinked, and it was night. Full and absolute, like someone threw a sheet over the sky. I was at work, 2:37 p.m., typing out a quarterly headcount report that no one reads. The office lights buzzed overhead like always. Someone was microwaving something that smelled like death and nostalgia. Someone in the back was laughing at a meme out loud. Just a Thursday. Then the windows went black. Not the kind where clouds roll in or the sky bruises before rain. This was like the sun gave up mid-shift and went home. I froze like everyone did, even the guy who never shuts up. You could hear breathing, hear the steady hum of machines. You could hear the absolute absence of anything natural. I checked my phone. It said 2:38. I remember thinking, why didn't the clock change to night mode? Because that's how dumb your brain gets when something impossible happens. You don't think the sun is gone. You think, maybe my brightness is low. For a while, everyone panicked in their own polite way. A message popped into the group chat, asking if we should evacuate. Someone muttered about drills. My boss opened his laptop like that would help. And still, no one went outside. Within minutes, the feed was everywhere. Live streams, news anchors in mid-stutter, TikToks with ring lights pointed at shaking faces, threads with timestamps and conspiracies posted under usernames that suddenly didn't seem so funny. Nobody knew what was happening, and that terrified people, because we are a species that needs a story before we need a solution. At 3:15 p.m., the panic peaked. Traffic snarled. Sirens rose like dogs sensing a quake. Someone in the adjacent building started praying into a megaphone. I heard a gunshot somewhere distant, like the first popcorn kernel at the bottom of the bag. I sat at my desk and refreshed the news, over and over. If someone posted the truth, I wanted to see it first. If the world ended, I wanted to watch it happen through a clean interface with no ads. Then, around an hour in, the statement started. A pale-faced spokesperson appeared on every feed at once, reading from a podium set too low for comfort. They called it a temporary solar occlusion, said it was atmospheric, said it was being monitored, said it wasn't dangerous, said nothing of substance. The diagrams came next. They make anything look scientific, even a lie. They used words like refraction anomaly and curvature deviation. But nobody explained why it had gone from noon to midnight in less than a second. Still, as the statements repeated, the panic slowed. The screaming dulled into murmurs. The online threads began using hashtags. People said it was weird but not terrifying. They began calling it beautiful. I watched it dissolve like sugar in tea. Fear didn't vanish, but it was manageable. It just got dressed up in official language and handed back to us with a press badge. And the world, God help us, the world listened. By the time most people had left the office, the lights were still on. Nothing had stopped working, just the sun. I stayed late, no real reason. Maybe part of me thought the sun would come back if I waited long enough. The chair was warm, the quiet was thick. Besides, the office lights still worked. Felt warmer than my apartment. Most left, one by one. But nobody said goodbye. We just nodded, like mourners at a wake, unsure who died. I sat in my chair, staring at the word doc with half a sentence. I thought about how strange it was. The light inside could keep going, even when the world outside had given up. Maybe that was the scariest part, that pretending it was fine was the only thing keeping us sane. I didn't go outside, not that night nor the next day, because even though I knew it was dark, I wasn't ready to see what that meant. On the second day, people stopped asking what happened. They started asking who they should be now. The talking heads kept talking. More press conferences, more diagrams, more branded optimism delivered with glassy eyes and steady cadence. But the cracks were showing. A market chain quietly announced they'd suspend perishables. One fuel supplier switched to backup generators and doubled their prices overnight. My usual app for grocery delivery went down. When it came back, they'd removed everything but bottled water, rice, and soy protein blocks, the ones that tasted like dust wrapped in wax paper. This collapse wasn't just quiet, it was polite. It said we're experiencing a delay. It said thank you for your patience, and people accepted it. Again, because that's what we do. We collapse in stages, but we collapse together. People started talking about the canopy. Not ironically, not like a meme. They were serious. There were infographics now, flat diagrams with pulsing circles and angelic labels, terms like the dome or the curtain. Someone posted a video where a government official visibly flinched when asked what satellites were really bouncing off of. And suddenly it didn't matter whether it was true. It had a name. That's all people needed. I don't believe it. I don't believe in ancient glass ceilings or divine theater stages or simulation overlays, but I believe people will follow anything that promises them clarity. Even if it's nonsense. Because if you hand people a story, they don't have to ask questions anymore. They just have to memorize the lines. Most of the rich were already gone, relocated to light stable zones, which meant bunkers, solar reserves, greenhouses underground. The rest of us, we got instructions on how to simulate morning using phone alarms and UV lamps. We were told to take our vitamin D and continue working from home. I kept trying to reach someone, even strangers. I commented on posts, replied to a few threads, typed, "Does anyone actually feel okay?" One person replied, "It's just like seasonal depression, you'll adjust." I didn't answer, because that wasn't an answer, that was resignation, bottled and sold as medicine. But the videos were getting harder to watch. I saw one where people broke into a grocery store, but there was nothing left to steal. So they sat in the aisles, gnawing on themselves in the dark, like animals that forgot they were ever human. I watched it on loop. The next night I unplugged everything, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to hear what the world actually sounded like now. No fans or commentary, nor curated dread, just the building creaking. The sound of my own breath too loud in the dark. And outside, in the distance, the city, holding its breath for something it doesn't want to see. I stood by the door for hours. The waiting was ritual, the hesitation a leftover comfort. My hand found the lock, opened it. No drama nor a final message. Not even fear. I just walked down the hallway barefoot, past closed doors and dim emergency lights, and climbed the stairwell like I was just checking the mail. I opened the roof hatch and looked up. The sky offered no cover, no clouds, no storm, no curtain, just stars. Countless, cold. So many it felt like they pressed against the edges of my mind. They weren't watching, nor were they waiting. They simply were, as they always had been, unconcerned if we ever noticed them at all. I didn't fall, nor did I cry. No revelation came. I just stood there, beneath them. And for the first time since any of this began, maybe for the first time in my life, I understood how small I truly was, and somehow, that made me feel whole. They weren't gods, nor were they monsters. They were honest, and when I finally looked up and saw them for what they were, the truth wasn't comforting, but it was mine.